what would you want that entrepreneur to consider or to look at or to think about before they jump in?
Right. I would say, as an umbrella, statement. I've owned my Amada for a little less than a year now, and knowing everything that I know right now, I would still do it again, 100%. I actually wish I found you guys 7 years ago as opposed to last
Wow.
year. So, but it is senior care is it's not an absentee business.
Hmm.
It's not a part-time business. In fact, it's 24/7 sometimes, but you don't know when.
Mm.
And like uh, the first person I was with on Christmas morning, 7:30 a.m., was a client who had an emergency in her family, called us on Christmas Eve. I went to the house on Christmas Eve, and I was the first one there on Christmas morning, to get the day,
Hmm.
started.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of We Are Amada, and I'm here with serial entrepreneur Don Pratt, who is the owner and CEO of Amada Senior Care in Charleston, North Carolina. Don, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. First time caller, long time listener. I listen to all of these podcasts. So
That's what
when
you
you
told me
invited me on, I
when
said, absolutely.
yeah, when I called you, I actually didn't know that some of our partners do still listen to the podcast even after they acquire the business. And you listened to it a little bit before, and now you still listen to it now that you are an Amada franchise partner.
Yeah, I think they're inspiring. When you have the veteran amount of people on there who have kind of done the hard yards and have really grown extremely successful businesses, it's like inspirational.
Hmm.
And then when you have people sharing challenges about the senior care industry and how things go, it's like, oh, I'm not alone. Other people are going
Yeah.
through this too. I'm not crazy.
So I was excited to have you on the show because I'm trying to think. I'm not sure that we've ever had anybody like you on the show. So we've had folks that are serial entrepreneurs, and I'd love for you to get into that. But also, you acquired an existing Amada Senior Care, and so you had a really good view into the business, probably a closer view than a lot of the entrepreneurs who come in and build their own. Um, and you're still in your just over a year today, right?
Coming up on you, not quite May of last year.
May of last year. Okay, um, so I'd love for you to just share a little bit about your background before Amada Senior Care, the businesses that you were involved in, and then let's talk a little bit about this idea of acquiring an existing business and what was that like, and a year later. So just your background, catch us up to before Amada Senior Care.
Sure. So I spent more than 25 years in local television across the country: Boston, San Francisco, Portland, Idaho, Charleston here. The most recent positions, that I had, I used to run television stations, local stations. That ended in about 2017 when the company that I worked for was purchased by another outfit, and they had their own person for my job. And so my wife and I are here in Charleston, and we didn't want to move, anymore. We'd been all across the country, and our kids were getting to a point we didn't want to do that. So I said, I'm going to do something else. And so I'm very grateful to have started a position, a contract job really, in television advertising. So I did that for a number of years. And I said, I need to build something a little bit more permanent, here. The advertising is great, but it's not something, that you could either sell or hand off. It was really just my work.
Hmm.
So I bought another franchise a few years ago and owned and operated that for a couple of years, and I really liked it. Um, I'm a man of a certain age, and I'm not sure how easy it would have been for me to find someone to hire me. But it's like, hey,
Hmm.
if I own the
Yeah,
company, there's no more laying off Don, anymore. It's
that's
like
right.
I'm going to be steering the tugboat, here.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for an opportunity, in the fall of 2024, and the Amada in Charleston was, for sale. Love the idea of the senior care space. My wife and I were going through it, personally with my in-laws,
Hmm.
who needed extra help, and we were putting a lot of time and energy in that. So I can totally see the need, for this service and how you can help, families. And then credit, to you folks. I started the conversation and I was looking at your franchise disclosure document, and I had seen dozens of these things. I was looking at all
Hmm.
different kinds, of companies, from epoxy floored, places
Yeah.
to, ice cream,
Uh-huh.
restaurants or something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, these Amadas are really doing well. Even the ones like in the lower 25% are still pretty good businesses. And to make a long story short, I'm really glad, that I did.
That's interesting. You should say that. Well, and the business you first owned was also, I think, one that you acquired.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So you acquired it, and what was it about your why acquire it an existing instead of just launching something from scratch? What was attractive to you about doing that?
Right. So it's really from a business acquisition, point, when you can acquire what I would call distressed properties that have potential. They're, first of all, they're great investment, opportunities. And like I said, I think if I was 20 years younger, I wouldn't necessarily be as hesitant to start from something, from scratch.
Mm,
But being at the point in my career, that I am, it's like that's going to be a little bit difficult, to maybe to do. Maybe that's not as attractive, option. And it has pros and cons, to it. But the pros are that, yeah, you've got staff and you've got revenue, coming in, and
mhm.
there are, systems, in place, and the cons are you don't have a learning curve, you have like a learning cliff. Like
Yeah,
you're
that's right.
responsible for the care of these
Immediately.
seniors on day
Yeah,
one, and you
yeah.
barely know how to answer the phone.
Hmm.
So it's a little stressful, but no, it was really, the from my experience in local television, it's an industry that, like, who's watching local television? It's older people, and so you
Yeah.
understand the dynamics. So when this Amada in Charleston came, for sale, it's like this is a great space, to be in. Uh, is so It's like this is like a no brainer. This is something that I can see myself doing for years and years and years. And it's like I said, it's AI proof. Like the need is always going to be there. And so I said, this
Yeah.
is this is great.
So you took over the business, and I remember when we were talking about this, you said, I love looking at a business that I can see what needs to be applied. I see where it's at, and I know what I need to apply to it. And if I do that, then I know that I can grow it. So
Right.
when you looked at the business, what were the things you thought, if I can just apply this, I know that I can grow it? What were those elements that you felt you could bring to the table?
Sure. So I think I got to preface it by saying the person that I bought, Amada from was delightful, was
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
helpful. It was very
Yeah, for
amicable.
sure.
She stayed with me, for a
Hmm.
month to make sure that I learned the ropes and got all the processes down.
Great
So it
family.
was it
Yeah.
was it was a great experience, and I really appreciate all the energy and effort she put into making it go smoothly for me.
Hmm.
But I think she was just in a different, place where maybe there was some family considerations that maybe needed her at home, more than maybe Amada needed her. And so it's just a matter of I have, more time and availability and to
Hmm.
get out into the community and meet with referral, sources, and market, our business, and introduce us to a whole host of people who don't even know who we are, or that we exist, here in Charleston.
Hmm.
It it's it's just, you have to put the energy and the effort, into, making those local, connections, so that you've got, friends and people that you can network with and refer things, be helpful to them, and they can refer, clients to you. And so I think that's kind of like the difference, um, coming in and trying to be, grow the company from what it was doing, previously.
Yeah. And you tell me about, we always talk about how Amada is different, how we do business differently, and our attention to long-term care insurance and how has that played out for you? Do you find that the message has allowed you to get out there and steal market share? Are we really different from the competition?
I think so. I am surprised that more people aren't focusing on the long-term care insurance aspect like
Hmm.
Amada, does. And uh, you have to understand it. You have to know what you're talking about, and you have to,
Hmm.
familiarize yourself with how that industry works and how you can, help, people. But when I go into, various places or discharge planners or something along those lines, and I talk about VA benefits or long-term care, insurance, it's it's like you're the only guy who's ever brought it up,
It's
and it's
weird,
like,
huh?
yeah, it is. I think it's very weird. And of the people who you meet who do have long-term care insurance, the percentage of those folks who actually understand what they
Mm.
have is fabulously low. So if you
Yeah.
can help them understand what they're entitled to, not only as far as home care, but potentially as assisted living, memory care, something
Hmm.
along home modifications and things along those lines, you're really doing them, a great, service. I think the one thing that I think is a shame, on the VA side and the long-term care insurance is people wait so long, for this. They wait for like there to be like a catastrophic, situation or an urgency or
Yeah.
something along those lines. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Where they could have been
it,
using it for years
yes,
prior, right?
yeah, exactly. Like there's money that they and like you guys preach this, so I'm not telling you anything that you haven't heard before, but it's like this is money that they've earned, that they've
Yeah.
invested in. This is a
Yeah.
resource that can help make their lives better, and you leave money on the table, because you took so long, to initiate this. So the more that we can teach people about long-term care insurance and also how our local VA works, then the quicker we can help people, and the quicker we can help more people. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is surprising that it's not a bigger focal point in our business. Which kudos to Amada for making that a kind of a foundation of what you teach folks, because it is a huge advantage.
Yeah. It's always been when we started here in Orange County, Tafa, our CO, he would say, "Well, let's do it. Until our competitors get wise to it, let's just focus on it and keep going." And we just kept deepening, deepening, deepening our focus on long-term care insurance, and it's so much deeper than just we take it or we file the claim. It's like you said, the education, working with carriers, and all the work that we're doing to just deepen ourselves into long-term care insurance. And I heard a stat that just last year, I think John Hancock paid over $1 billion in claims in the United States for long-term care insurance for dressing, bathing, walking, grooming. $1 billion. I think it was 2 billion or something crazy. So we still have a long way to go. And
Right.
that's a
Yep.
lot of business to go after.
Yeah,
It's
and
crazy.
and like I said, it's I hope, because I think talking to some of the the kids of some of the clients that we have, it's like see the benefit that your mom and dad have from having this in place. And I don't know, I think it's just it's by nature, you never really think that you're going to be in a position of needing long-term care insurance. But man, the
Right.
clients who have it,
Yeah.
it's a godsend for some of those
Awesome.
folks. I know from I'm running through a list of clients that we have in our head and or in our roster that I don't know what they would do without long-term care insurance, because
Yeah.
we have folks who don't have family in town, and so like we're the only ones who come to the house to help them. And if they didn't have those long-term care insurance policies in place, they wouldn't be able to even have that. So just a huge difference maker to some of our folks.
So, what would you say to an entrepreneur who is looking at Amada Senior Care and considering either starting an Amada or acquiring an existing Amada location, what would you want that entrepreneur to consider or to look at or to think about before they jump in?
Right. I would say, as an umbrella, statement. I've owned my Amada for a little less than a year now, and knowing everything that I know right now, I would still do it again, 100%. I actually wish I found you guys 7 years ago as opposed to last
Wow.
year. So, but it is senior care is it's not an absentee business.
Hmm.
It's not a part-time business. In fact, it's 24/7 sometimes, but you don't know when.
Mm.
And like the first person I was with on Christmas morning, 7:30 a.m., was a client who had an emergency in her family, called us on Christmas Eve. I went to the house on Christmas Eve, and I was the first one there on Christmas morning, to get the day,
Hmm.
started. Um, it's not when you look at the financial disclosure documents and you see like the year over year increases, for Amada, or what those top tier, Amadas, like, as an entrepreneur, that can lure you in and say, oh my God, this is great. Get me to one of those, places or something like that.
Hmm.
It's not magic. It doesn't happen, overnight. And it can be a lot of, energy and effort, on your behalf. But if you follow the plan, if you follow recommendations, if you work with your franchise business, consultant, like I'm seeing it, right now, where there are times my wife and I are out for dinner or something like that, and I'm just kind of sharing some ideas about the business, and I'm just like, I think it's happening, I think it's
That's cool.
happening. Like but it's my phone has never rung as much as it does since I joined, whether it's clients or
Yeah. Yeah.
caregivers or schedulers or something along, those lines. So, but no, I would just, definitely, you know, I not, and not just because I'm talking to you, here on this podcast here, but I find the people behind the scenes at Amada like are fabulously supportive. I had an issue with the VA, it was actually just a technical, glitch, in terms of
Mm.
the way our information was showing up on the VA side. And Heidi
Yeah.
and Jess are jumping on, like, helping me get that thing, squared away and things along, those lines. So, there's no business, no franchise is going to do it for you. They can be
Right.
like more helpful or less helpful or something along, those lines. And like I said, I'm a person at a certain age, like I don't necessarily like having people telling me, what to do. And I think
Sure. You're
sometimes,
right. Yeah.
folks have that perception of a franchise. It's like, hey, if I do this franchise, I can't do things my way or something
Hmm.
like. And it's not like that, at all. But it does. It is not magic. It is not magic. It is work. It's pounding the street. It's getting to know people. It's and the other part, when I first came on board, in talking to our staff who were in place in the care, was like, first things first, like, we're going to do a good job. Like, nothing else works if we don't do a good job here. It doesn't matter how much networking you do, if your service stinks, if
Yeah.
your communication isn't good, if you're
Hmm.
not doing right by the clients, then so you have to have that, the responsibility that you have. It's like, we're not a retail store or something like along
Right.
those lines,
Yeah.
where if something goes
Yeah.
wrong, it's, all right, I'm just going to do a refund, here, sorry, I'll
Hmm.
give you your money back or something. It doesn't work
Yeah.
like
You're not
that.
selling
So
sandwiches or video games or widgets, right?
exactly.
It's not a transactional thing.
And that's one of the things that I wasn't worried about, that because I kind of have, like, baked into my personality is a high degree of responsibility. Having all those years in the news business on local television, where you have breaking news and you're covering hurricanes and elections, and, like, that's not a
That's
nine to
true.
five job.
It's not a
You're
nine to
you're
five.
working
You're right.
you're working Saturdays and Sundays, and there's emergencies and things like that pop up all the time. And what do? It's scheduling, it's moving resources. You're moving
Hmm.
reporters, photographers, producers, putting everyone in place to do this job. It's like you're kind of doing the same thing with caregivers and clients. Here, what's the
Very
breaking
interesting.
news? Like, what's the
Yeah. Yeah.
response that
What's
we
the
have to
breaking
have?
news?
How do
Yeah.
you do, like I had done scheduling for 90 people, before, in a union environment,
Mm.
and it's like, this is
Yeah, I never
The
made that
guy,
correlation. You're right.
yeah,
You were in a very urgent people business in the news.
yes,
A very urgent and people business. Wow, that is so true. A lot of
and
personalities, a lot of field people, in-house people.
a
Yeah,
lot of
that is so
deadlines.
interesting. A lot of
Like,
deadlines. Yeah.
the news is on at
Yeah.
5 o'clock every day, whether you want to be there or not.
That's
Like
right.
the
Either you're
show
ready or
goes on.
not.
And
Yeah.
so when you bring that sense of urgency to it, like,
Hmm.
oh, this the show's on at 5 o'clock. Let's go. Let's get there. We got to make it happen. We got to put people in place to cover the story or fill the shift or something along
Yeah.
those lines. So
Yeah, that is very interesting. That's a lot of our business, right? Moving resources and doing a good job. I love that you mentioned that's you could do all the marketing in the world, but if your service isn't good, it's just not going to matter.
right.
How did your team react to that? Was that a difficult standard to meet, or is this something that you're able to? Do you feel like you're achieving on a daily basis?
Yes. Now, I will say this, that I was very fortunate for instance, to inherit, from the previous owner, a scheduler who I
Mm,
shout out to Caprice. I love Caprice, and she's still on the team here, knows everyone, does a great job. And that makes it very much, more easier since that
yeah,
we've, hired a part-time office administrator. Got to say hi to Isabella, too. Like,
yeah,
they both have the ability, to handle stuff that okay, listen, we have this crisis here. Maybe we have three crises or something like that. You handle this one, I'll handle this one, and someone else can handle the other one. So it's they reacted great, to this, which I really do, appreciate. But then, the volume that we're doing right now, there's more moving puzzle pieces, and so
mm,
you can sense that there's a little bit of like, hey, it used to be like this,
yeah,
but now it's like this, and that's
yeah,
more calls, more work, more scheduling. And I think it's just kind of like, basic math. I think when you're small, and I would still put us into probably one of the smaller, Amada things. Like, we're not a startup, here, but when you have fewer clients and fewer caregivers, I mean, your phone tends to stay a little bit more quiet than it might,
hmm,
otherwise. But it's like, hey, if you want to push through a certain level and you want to build, the business here, then that comes with a little bit more, energy and effort and potential, problems that
right.
you have to solve, and things along, those lines. So, but they've been great. They've been great. And I would stress that too. It's like, if you're going to do this, I was thinking, like, what would I do if I was like in a startup mode, or something like that.
Yeah,
It's like, I would
right.
still encourage, like, get a helper. Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
get doing this by yourself, even coming out of the gate. It's like, you have to have somebody doing this, with you.
It's too much, right?
Right.
Yeah, you need to have, and it's also identifying the what are you good at and what are you not good at, and having those things that you struggle with, you're not good at, is and pass it off to somebody else who's better than you at doing that, so you can focus on still building the business. But it is a lot, what's cool is it's a business that is variable for the fact that it's one client, one relationship, one caregiver at a time, right? You have these building pieces that you have to keep adding: one caregiver, one client,
Right.
one relationship. And as those keep building, I think you're getting to that point, right, where it's kind of like you feel it. You said, we were before this, we started recording. You said, I feel it. I feel like this energy that is happening right now of more phone calls, more activity, more referrals. But in the beginning, and when it's just you, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs that they're not a partnership, it's just that one person. They acquire the franchise and now they're going, okay, what do I do now? It's just me. And they go from one client to one caregiver to one relationship, to one problem, right? But that just keeps growing. When would you say, could you see yourself launching this by yourself for a period of time and then hiring somebody, or would you want to have somebody by your side right away?
I think I would want to have somebody, right away. And like I said,
Mm,
I think that it may be, you know, because like I said, because I'm a I had been successful in business, there. It's like I wouldn't have needed any business that I invested in to make money right away, and for a
Yeah,
lot of startup,
right.
folks, that's not necessarily, the case. Some
Very
people,
true. Yeah.
they said, listen, I can't go for a year, without making an income or something along those lines. I need to
Hmm.
return a little bit quicker than that. And I wasn't in that, set of circumstances. Although our franchise was making money, at the time, it was,
Hmm.
profitable. But I would still, suggest it's even just for the emotional, support, or
Hmm.
for the just dividing and conquering those type of things. Like I can't imagine like doing this, by yourself. Maybe you have to, but I would advise anyone the quicker that you can add, to your team so that you can do the things that you are good at, and maybe offload the recruiting or something like that to somebody else. Um, that's important. And I also think just having somebody to help emotionally center you, as
Hmm.
well, that you can kind of discuss, issues with. Because I think the one thing about when you're on the smaller, side, and like I said, I'm taking it on a little bit of a tangent here from the original question here, but
Yeah, yeah.
like when you're the thing that I am getting better at, now is like, for instance, we have clients who have passed away, or
Right.
maybe they moved, closer to family in another, state, and they come off our roster. It's like
Hmm.
when you only have X amounts of clients on your roster, like if something happens to two of those folks, like it's like, wow, 20% of my business
Sure.
just
Right.
just went up or down. Even when you get
Yeah.
a new client, you just like
Yeah.
you get two new clients, and it's like the thing that emotionally is difficult when you're smaller is how quickly your business can swing from we're having a great week. Oh, if we just do this 52 weeks out of the year, I'm going to make $1 million and all this other stuff. And then like the,
Yeah.
the very
Yeah.
like literally the next day, you're like, rats, what just happened here? Like
Yeah.
we just lost, 20, we have one client, one of our best clients just, you know, had something go sideways, or just people, there's it's a senior population. Sometimes they go to a hospital or rehab or something like that, and even if they're just off your roster for 4 weeks or something like that, you're like,
Yeah.
wow, that. But now I think the thing that I focused on now, because like is the as long as we still have the activity going, that we still have the phone calls, we still have the meetings, we still have the client intake, calls or something like that, then you're able to weather the storm a little bit better, emotionally, from the highs and lows. Like when I first started doing this, like I would literally go from one day to the next day, like we need more clients, we're in real big trouble, we need more clients, and then the next day you're like, we need more caregivers, we just put on a ton of
Yeah.
hours. Like, and that can happen
Yeah.
like within 24 hours, and
The
like the
wild
swings that you
swings.
get,
Yes.
exactly.
Do you know Sad and Mona in Florida?
I don't, but I will say this. I met, I went to the conference for the first time, this year,
Yeah.
and I literally met dozens of people. So I may have
Yeah.
met them, at the conference, there, but you meet so many people, you're just like, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So they're in their first year, and I was out in Florida. We went to Universal Studios and we brought the kids, and so Sad and Mona came out with their boy and came in and spent a day at the parks with us. And I remember at the park, he shows up. I give him a hug. He's like, "How's it going, man?" He goes, "Man, I had like the worst week. It was such a tough week because it
Right.
was one of those weeks where when you're in the startup phase and you have 7 clients, and I think it was he lost 3 clients that week." And he goes like, "That just was crazy. I was on this high and then I lose 3 clients. That's a huge percentage." And and so he was kind of going through that on the weekend as we're going on rides and kind of trying to have fun, and it was really hard on him. And then I called him 2 weeks later. I said, "How's it going?" He goes, "Man, what a great week. Oh man, it's been
Yeah.
amazing. Now we're back up and we did this and I feel it. There's like this energy." Kind of the same thing you said, and it's cool, right? And when you call people that are in their past their first year and their second year, their third year, the problems there are problems, but they change, right? They're a little bit different because you have such a bigger roster, and as that ebbs and flows is not that big of a deal because your roster's so much bigger. but it's an exciting time, right? And like you said, it's being able to kind of weather that and weather those good days and bad days in the business, and it can be tough, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it
Hmm.
works exactly like that. The good days, and the bad days. Like I said, I was sharing. I'm not sure if we were talking about this on the recording, but I was talking to Matt Smith.
Yeah,
With Amada. Training.
yeah.
Fabulously helpful when I went to Amada University. I learned a
Hmm.
ton, there. But last week we signed 5 clients in one day. And
Wow,
like I don't think
that's
Charleston's ever
amazing.
done that. It was great. It was 3 long-term care insurance clients, a private pay, and a VA person who I
That's
actually got across
incredible.
the finish line, which
Uh-huh.
is always rewarding to see that. And so like you have a day like that, and you just have to understand it's like you can do it, but
Hmm.
um, sometimes it takes time. Like I have one person who started service with us last month, who I had been
Uh-huh.
talking to since last August.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
you have to stay in touch. You have to stay organized. You have to keep your touches,
Hmm.
up, and keep track of folks, and it's been surprising, how many folks that you have an initial contact with, and you share information, you learn what's going on, there, but they don't make a decision right away. It's a big, decision here. Check back with them 30 days, from now. It's like, hey, tell me about your situation. Has it gotten any better for you? Is there anything we
Yeah.
do to help? It's like, as a matter of fact, yeah, we could use some help now. I think Dad's coming around or
Wow.
something like
Yeah.
that. And it's like, so, but yeah, but the highs and lows, are great. And but the thing that I think sustains you through that, because I try to, like, I do all the onboarding for our new clients, and I try to be there on the
Uh-huh.
first day of service. We actually had 2 clients start today, so that's how I started my
Hmm.
day this morning, is going out doing introductions with the caregivers, because that's like an awkward type of situation to have
Yeah.
somebody come into your home for the first time. And I had
Hmm.
met the family before, and I know the caregivers, so you can kind of tell everyone, share the expectations and things along those lines. So
Hmm.
like I meet all the clients, and so when you meet them, it does kind of help to understand what they're going through, and it makes it worthwhile, because you
Yeah.
can, it's not a yeah, there's revenues and rosters, tied to it or something like that. But there's people on the other end of that,
Yeah.
too, who you
Right.
like, you know.
Right. Right.
Um, it's like, oh, this is a great family. It's a great couple. Of course, we want to help you
Yeah.
out, there, and want
Right.
to do a good job, for you
Yeah.
there. So that's the other, part of it, too, is you meet folks, and you're just like, we yes, we're in the business of nobody can provide this service for free.
Hmm.
There's things that we have to do as businesses, to you know to be in a position to help folks. But
Hmm.
yeah, there's revenue, and then there's your client roster and things along those lines. But it's also the people that you get to meet, too.
Yeah. 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 It is. It is. It is beautiful. It's. Yeah. I think that's the
And
part that. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, no, I think I had heard you, talking, because I know that there are, some folks who had maybe been in the senior care business before, or maybe something, to it before, coming to Amada. Well, I obviously hadn't, done that. I've been, working at television, stations here,
Yeah. Right.
but
Yeah.
and I've heard people talk about, like, having a heart, coming to this business with a heart for serving, seniors. I didn't have that, but it works the opposite way. Like, if you didn't have a heart for it before, and you go and meet your clients and spend time with them, you'll grow a heart. Like,
That's
unless there's something
interesting.
wrong with you there, because
Right. Yeah.
you know you meet these folks. And I'll share a quick story about one of the
Yeah.
we were I was doing one of my first client meetings, and I was with the previous owner. So we went there, together. This was my first time meeting, this couple, and we're going through the, the assessment process and just kind of, figuring out what the folks need at home. And we're about 10 minutes into this interview, and I said, well, I say time out here for a second. And I said the gentleman's name. I said, I know you from my previous business. Like, you used to come into the previous business and print prayer cards and send them to your Navy buddies, didn't you?
No way.
And he's like, Don? And I'm like, yep. And so,
Wow.
and then that sealed it. He goes, I've known this guy, he goes, yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that was you or something like that. I said, done deal. Like, done deal. If Don's going to be here, he's going to
way.
help, take care of us and stuff like that. That's going to be, great. And so, I don't know. I've just met a whole bunch of people that that you're helping take care of, but you're also tremendously fond of them, as well.
Man, that is really cool. It makes me think about, my parents out there. They're in Cary. I love your message because all of us are hoping that's what happens, right? That a Don walks in to my parents' house, right? Somebody that they're going to be able to trust, somebody that's going to enjoy meeting them, who's going to share that story, who gets a high from that relationship. So man, I'm so glad that you are here. And there's so many parents out there, so many kids that are so lucky, right, in that Charleston area to have you walking into their parents' houses. And I think it's important I love that you brought that distinction up, that if the prospect of meeting these folks and talking to these folks and it being more than just the money is sort of a turnoff, then this is probably the wrong business for you, right? That's got to be something that's going to be enjoyable to you, and the side of also working with caregivers, right? And being with caregivers and training caregivers and nurturing them and helping them is also, of course, a huge side of the business as well. And you've got to have it's funny you said it. You said if you don't have a heart for it, you will grow one.
100%.
But it wasn't. I mean, you must have considered that before you bought it when you said if you don't have a heart. I mean, was it something that you were excited to do, or you just didn't really consider what it would be like?
No, I definitely did, consider that because I think it's one of the things that I would recommend, as to any, entrepreneur is like, you have to bring some level of passion to what you're doing, because if you're trying
Yeah.
to sell anything, whether it's a service or a product, and you can't sit in front of somebody and say, this will absolutely work, for you, we can help, and we're proud to offer this, service, to you, then I don't know, if you can't get behind your own product, you're not going, to be successful.
Yeah, there's no way.
and that you're
Right.
never going to just put the energy and effort into it that's required. And I just know from my wife and I, from our personal experience helping members, in our family, it's like, man, we're doing a lot of hours, on this, and it's like my wife works full time, like I work, full time, here. So I had no problem, whatsoever seeing the value in terms of what Amada does and other service, companies, do. So, but yeah, like you have to, like I said, you got to grow it. You can come to it, but I think if it's just a money, thing, like you certainly can make money, in senior care, with that approach by just putting systems in place,
Right.
I guess. But when you're small, your advantage is that when someone comes into the house to meet with mom and dad, I would tell them, it's like, well, what's the difference between us and some other, I'm the owner of the company and I'm here.
Right. Yeah.
When you call our office, like I'm going to answer, the phone, here. And, in some of the research, that I've done with, the Amada folks in terms of assessing the lay of the land in Charleston and what the competition, is like, never encountered another owner, picking up the phone, and talking directly to you, or maybe going out, to the house. I'm sure that it exists, somewhere.
Sure.
I just haven't come across it, yet. But yeah, I think it's a tougher business to be in if you don't have if you don't take the responsibility, really seriously. That's, I guess, the probably like the bottom line, here. There are people who need you, and if you don't care whether you fill a shift, or not, because for whatever reason it's just not that important to you, then I would definitely say no. That's the wrong business,
Yeah.
But there's when you're when the cable guy or the electrician doesn't come, or they're the person delivering your refrigerator is 4 hours late or something like that. It's annoying, but it's not
Yeah.
the same as
Not
when
the same.
somebody doesn't come to take care of your mom and dad in the morning there.
It's a great responsibility.
Yeah.
Well, Don, thank you so much for doing this interview with us. We really appreciate your time. Congratulations on all your success. We're so lucky to have you in the Amada family. We're thrilled, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And like I said, I'm thrilled to be in the Amada family. And like I said, I wish I found you guys, years ago, because where would we be, now, if that was the case. But
Yeah,
no, very thankful, to be part, of the group. Very excited about what's coming, next for us down here over the next, couple of years. And, you know, thanks for all, you do in terms of, you were the first person I talked to, when I was
that's
coming into
right.
the
Yeah,
Amada,
and I remember
system,
that conversation.
there.
Yeah,
So
yes.
it went really well. So thank you too.
You're welcome, Don. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us for this episode of We Are Amada. If you want to learn more about Amada Senior Care, you know where to find us. And we'll see you soon on the next episode.
Amada's franchise disclosure document was the most impressive one I have
Huh.
seen.
That's amazing to hear.
You just don't see those numbers on franchises, like that have it, relatively speaking, like a minimal investment number to get it off the ground,
To get to where that,
to
yeah,
get
yeah.
that where it is, and how quickly, for having been in business for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, like wow, you can get there in 2 years, like even from scratch, like that's crazy. So good for you guys for putting up the numbers.